Princess Zarathul stood motionless beside her father's obsidian throne, her forearms folded in the traditional pose of royal dignity. The massive doors of the throne room groaned open, their crystalline surface catching the light from 1,000 hovering orbs that illuminated the chamber. She had witnessed countless audiences in this hall over her 2 centuries of life, had seen delegations from every corner of the Galactic Federation bow before the Vorthan Empire's might. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The human entered the room with a confidence that defied logic. Behind him walked Ambassador Kethrak, the nervous Talarian's 6 legs clicking rapidly against the polished floor as he struggled to keep pace. The human moved differently than any being she had ever observed. Where other species scuttled, slithered, or glided with their natural grace, this creature walked with a purposeful stride that seemed to challenge the very air around him. Captain Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Force stood 6 feet tall, which was average for his species, but towering by galactic standards. His dark hair was cut short in military fashion, and his brown eyes swept the throne room with an analytical gaze that missed nothing. Unlike the flowing robes favored by most galactic diplomats, he wore a simple black uniform with silver insignia that caught the light as he moved. "Your Imperial Majesty," Ambassador Kethrak began, his voice trembling slightly, "I present Captain Marcus Chun, military attaché and diplomatic representative of the human colony worlds." Emperor Vorthan leaned forward on his throne, his massive frame casting shadows across the dais. The ruler of the Vorthan Empire possessed the typical features of his race: dark purple skin that seemed to absorb light, for powerful arms ending in clawed hands, and eyes like molten gold that had intimidated countless enemies over his 4th-century reign. So, the Emperor's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "These are the humans we have heard whispers about. The species that appeared from nowhere and began establishing colonies in contested space." Marcus stepped forward, and Zarathul felt something strange flutter in her chest. He showed no fear, no hesitation in the face of her father's intimidating presence. Instead, he offered a respectful bow that somehow managed to convey respect without submission. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice clear and steady, "humanity comes before the Vorthan Empire seeking not conflict, but understanding. We are new to this galaxy, but we are not naive about its dangers." The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. "Understanding? Your species has established 17 colonies in sectors that 3 different empires have laid claim to. Some might call that aggressive expansion. Others might call it survival," Marcus replied without missing a beat. "Humanity learned long ago that those who do not grow die. But growth does not require the destruction of others." Zarathul found herself studying the human's face as he spoke. There was something in his expression that she had never seen before in the countless diplomatic meetings she had attended. While other species came before her father with either arrogance or fear, this human displayed something else entirely: genuine conviction. "Survival," Emperor Vorthan mused, settling back in his throne. "Tell me, Captain Chun, what does humanity know of survival? Your species has existed in space for what, 50 of your years? Some of the beings in this room have lived longer than your entire space-faring civilization." A slight smile tugged at the corner of Marcus's mouth, and Zarathul felt that strange flutter again. "Respectfully, Your Majesty, humanity has been surviving much longer than 50 years. We learned survival on a world that tried to kill us every day. Predators that hunted us, diseases that ravaged us, natural disasters that destroyed our cities, and wars that nearly wiped us out entirely." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "What we've learned in space is simply an extension of what we learn on Earth. That survival is not just about strength or technology. It's about adaptation, cooperation, and the will to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless." The throne room fell silent except for the soft humming of the gravity generators. Zarathul watched her father's face carefully, reading the micro-expressions that she had learned to interpret over decades of studying his moods. The emperor was intrigued, which was both rare and dangerous. Adaptation. The emperor repeated slowly. "Show me, your majesty?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he understood perfectly what was being asked. "I have heard reports that humans possess unusual capabilities. Stories that seem too extraordinary to believe. The Keshri fleet claims you destroyed 3 of their dreadnoughts with outdated frigates. The Mining Guild reports that human workers can function in environments that would kill most species. I want to see what makes humanity so adaptable." Zarathal's 4 hands clenched involuntarily. Her father was testing the human, pushing him to prove his species' worth. She had seen him do this countless times before, and it rarely ended well for the visitors. Marcus nodded slowly. "What would you have me demonstrate, your majesty?" The emperor gestured to one of his guards, a massive Vorthan warrior who stood nearly 8 feet tall and carried a ceremonial war staff that could discharge enough energy to level a small building. "Crothall, show our guest the traditional test of worthiness." The guard stepped forward and activated his staff, which began to glow with accumulated energy. He held it out horizontally between his 2 lower arms while his upper arms gestured for Marcus to approach. "The test is simple," the emperor explained. "Most species possess natural abilities that allow them to handle energy discharges. Vorthans absorb energy through our skin. Talarians can redirect it through their carapaces. Even the primitive Keshri can dissipate electrical charges through their modified nervous systems. Humans, I am told, have no such natural defenses." Zarathul watched in fascination and growing concern as Marcus approached the glowing staff without hesitation. The energy weapon was set to a level that would cause painful but non-fatal burns to most species. For a human with no natural energy resistance, it could be devastating. "The challenge," the emperor continued, "is to maintain contact with the staff while it discharges a full energy cycle. Most beings use their natural abilities to survive. What will humanity use?" Marcus reached out and grasped the staff with both hands. Immediately, Zarathul could see the energy beginning to course through his body. His jaw tightened, and she could see the muscles in his neck strain, but he did not let go. "Fascinating," her father murmured. "No energy absorption, no redirection, no apparent defense at all. Yet he maintains his grip." The energy discharge intensified, and Zarathul found herself leaning forward in concern. She could see smoke beginning to rise from where Marcus's hands contacted the staff, could smell the acrid scent of burning flesh. Still, he held on. What happened next would be burned in her memory forever. Instead of screaming or begging for mercy, as the energy tore through his nervous system, Marcus began to speak. His voice was strained but steady, and he spoke not to the emperor or his guard, but directly to her. "In human mythology," he said through gritted teeth, "we have a story about a man named Prometheus. He stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, knowing he would be punished for it. They chained him to a mountain where an eagle would tear out his liver every day, and every night it would grow back so the torture could continue." The energy reached its peak intensity, and Zarathul could see Marcus's entire body shaking from the assault. But his eyes never left hers, and his voice never faltered. "The gods thought they were punishing him," he continued, "but Prometheus understood something they did not. Pain is not weakness. Pain is simply information. And humans have learned to process that information and keep functioning regardless." The energy cycle completed, and the staff dimmed. Marcus released it and took a step back, his hands visibly burned but still functional. He looked up at the emperor with the same steady gaze he had maintained throughout the ordeal. "That," he said simply, "is what humanity uses. Not special abilities or natural defenses. We use will. We use the determination to endure whatever must be endured and to keep moving forward no matter the cost." The throne room erupted in shocked murmurs from the assembled courtiers, but Zarathul heard none of it. Her entire attention was focused on the human who had just willingly subjected himself to torture rather than show weakness, and who had somehow made even that act into something beautiful by sharing it with her. In that moment, she understood with crystal clarity that her life had just changed forever. This strange, scarred, utterly magnificent being had walked in her father's throne room and stolen something she had never even known she possessed. Her heart. The emperor slowly rose from his throne, his golden eyes fixed on Marcus with what might have been respect. Impressive, Captain Shun. Most impressive indeed. It seems the reports about human resilience were not exaggerated. Resilience is just another word for stubbornness, Your Majesty, Marcus replied, flexing his damaged hands experimentally. And humans are very, very stubborn. Indeed, the emperor said, a hint of amusement in his voice. We shall continue this discussion tomorrow. Guard Captain Zarathul will show you to your quarters. Zarathul started in surprise. Her father rarely assigned her to escort duties, and never for beings he considered unimportant. She stepped forward, trying to maintain her composure, even as her mind raced. It would be my honor, she said formally, though her heart was beating so rapidly she was certain everyone in the room could hear it. As she led Marcus from the throne room, she caught her father watching her with those knowing golden eyes, and realized that the emperor of the Vorthan Empire was far more perceptive than she had ever given him credit for. The game, she realized, had only just begun. The corridors of the imperial palace stretched endlessly in all directions, their walls lined with crystalline formations that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Zarathul walked beside Marcus, acutely aware of the way her four arms moved in unconscious rhythm with his steady stride. She had escorted countless dignitaries through these halls, but never had she been so conscious of every step, every breath, every subtle shift in the air between them. Your hands, she said finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since leaving the throne room. They must be causing you considerable pain. Marcus glanced down at his burned palms and shrugged, a gesture that seemed uniquely human in its casual dismissal of suffering. Pain fades. First impressions last forever. Is that a human saying? Zarathul asked, genuinely curious. In all her studies of galactic cultures, she had never encountered a species that treated pain so matter-of-factly. Something like that, Marcus replied. We have many sayings about pain. Actually, pain is weakness leaving the body. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Pain is temporary, but quitting lasts forever. He flexed his fingers experimentally. Humans have a complicated relationship with suffering. They passed through an archway into one of the palace's many garden atriums, where bioluminescent plants from across the galaxy created a constellation of colors in the artificial twilight. Zarathul found herself slowing, reluctant to reach Marcus's assigned quarters and in their time together. Tell me about your world, she said impulsively. Earth. What was it like growing up on a planet that tried to kill you every day? Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her fully for the first time since leaving the throne room. Zarathul was struck again by the intensity of his gaze, the way his brown eyes seemed to see not just her appearance, but something deeper. Beautiful, he said simply. Terrifyingly, devastatingly beautiful. He moved to one of the garden's viewing alcoves, where a transparent wall offered a view of the palace's sprawling city below. Millions of lights twinkled in the darkness, representing billions of beings from hundreds of species, all living together under Vorthan rule. Imagine, Marcus said, a world where the very air could poison you, where microscopic organisms could kill you from within, where the ground itself could split open and swallow entire cities, where storms could level mountains and floods could reshape continents overnight. It sounds horrifying, Zarathul said, moving to stand beside him at the viewing wall. How did your species survive such conditions? We learned to work together, Marcus replied. When your environment is actively hostile, you quickly realize that the biggest threat to survival isn't each other. It's the world itself. Humans learned cooperation not out of nobility, but out of necessity. He pointed at the city below them. See how organized this all is? How efficiently everything flows. That's the product of millions of years of civilization, of species that evolved with natural advantages and built upon them gradually. Zarathul nodded. The Vorthan Empire had indeed been built over millennia, each generation adding to the accumulated knowledge and power of those who came before. Earth wasn't like that, Marcus continued. Every few thousand years, something would happen. A supervolcano eruption, an ice age, an asteroid impact, a plague that killed 90% of the population. We had to start over. Again and again and again. That sounds exhausting, Zarathul said softly. It made us adaptable, Marcus said. When you know that everything you build might be destroyed tomorrow, you learn to build things that can be rebuilt quickly. You learn to value people over things, knowledge over possessions, flexibility over stability. He turned away from the window to look at her again, and Zarathul felt that strange flutter in her chest intensify. But more than that, it taught us something that I don't think any other species in the galaxy truly understands. What's that? She asked, though she was having difficulty concentrating on his words when he was looking at her like that. Hope, he said simply. When you've lost everything multiple times, when you've watched civilizations fall and been forced to rebuild from nothing, you learn that no situation is truly hopeless. There's always another chance, always another way forward, always a reason to keep fighting. They stood in silence for a moment, and Zarathul found herself studying his face in the soft light of the bioluminescent plants. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting into harsh sunlight, a small scar on his chin that told of some long-ago accident, and something in his expression that she was beginning to recognize as quintessentially human, a mixture of wariness and optimism that should have been contradictory, but somehow wasn't. You're not what I expected, she said quietly. What did you expect? Marcus asked, amusement coloring his voice. I'm not sure, Zarathul admitted. The reports about humans are conflicting. Some describe you as savage warriors who solve every problem with violence. Others say you're brilliant diplomats who can negotiate your way out of any situation. Still others claim you're technological innovators who can adapt any technology to purposes its creators never imagined. Maybe we're all of those things, Marcus said. Humans are complicated. We contradict ourselves constantly. How so? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering. We're the species that created both poetry and nuclear weapons. We could be incredibly compassionate to strangers while being cruel to our own families. We'll risk our lives to save a single child, then wage wars that kill millions. We're capable of both the most beautiful art and the most terrible destruction, sometimes within the same generation. That sounds chaotic, Zarathul said. It is, Marcus agreed, but chaos isn't always bad. Order is predictable, efficient, stable. Chaos is creative, adaptive, surprising. When a universe throws something unexpected at you, order breaks down. Chaos finds a way to survive. They resumed walking, passing through corridors lined with tapestries depicting the great victories of Vorthan history. Zarathul had grown up surrounded by these images of her ancestors' triumphs. But seeing them now through Marcus's eyes, she wondered what stories human tapestries would tell. What about you? Marcus asked suddenly. What's it like being a princess in the most powerful empire in the galaxy? The question caught Zarathul off guard. Most beings who met her either fawned over her status or were too intimidated to engage with her personally. Marcus seemed genuinely curious about her as an individual, not as a political entity. Lonely, she said before she could stop herself, then immediately regretted the admission. I mean, it's an honor to serve the Empire in any capacity my father deems appropriate. Marcus stopped walking again and turned to face her with that intense gaze. No, he said softly. You meant lonely. I can see it. See what? Zarathul asked, though her heart was racing at the gentleness in his voice. The way you hold yourself apart from everyone else. The way you watch people like you're trying to figure out how they connect to each other while you remain separate. I recognize it because I felt it too. You? Zarathul asked in surprise. But you seem so confident, so comfortable with yourself. Military training. Marcus said with a slight smile. You learn to project confidence even when you don't feel it. But being a leader, whether it's a military unit or a royal court, means making decisions that others can't or won't make. It means being responsible for outcomes that you can't always control. And ultimately, it means being alone with that responsibility. They had reached the entrance to the guest quarters, a lavishly appointed suite that overlooked one of the palace's private gardens. Marcus paused at the threshold, but made no move to enter. Thank you, he said, for escorting me and for the conversation. It's been enlightening. The pleasure was mine, Zarathul replied formally, though every instinct was screaming at her not to let this moment end. Marcus studied her face for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling that he could read her thoughts. Princess, he said carefully, would it be appropriate for me to ask you a question that might be considered personal? Zarathul's four hearts seemed to skip in unison. Ah, yes, you may ask. In the throne room, when I was holding that energy staff, I spoke about Prometheus. I told that story for you, not for the emperor or his court. Did you understand why? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made Zarathul's breath catch. She understood exactly why he had told her that story, had felt the connection he was trying to make even as he endured the torture of the energy discharge. You were showing me that pain can be transformed into something meaningful, she said quietly. That suffering shared becomes something different than suffering endured alone. Marcus nodded slowly. And Zarathul continued, her voice barely above a whisper. You were telling me that some things are worth enduring any amount of pain for. They stood there for what felt like an eternity, two beings from completely different worlds, speaking a language of understanding that transcended species or culture. Finally, Marcus stepped back and offered a formal bow. Good night, Princess Zarathul, he said. I hope we'll have the opportunity to continue our conversation tomorrow. Good night, Captain Shun, she replied, returning his bow with equal formality. But as she walked back through the endless corridors toward her own quarters, Zarathul knew that sleep would be impossible. The human had done something to her, changed something fundamental in the way she saw herself and her world. For the first time in her 2 centuries of life, she understood what the ancient poets had meant when they wrote about the terrible, wonderful madness of love. And she realized that tomorrow could not come soon enough. Dawn on Vorthen Prime painted the sky in shades of deep purple and gold, and Zarathul stood on the balcony of her private chambers watching the twin suns rise over the imperial capital. She had not slept, but for the first time in years, insomnia felt like a gift rather than a curse. Her mind replayed every moment of her conversation with Marcus, analyzing every word, every gesture, every shared glance. A soft chime indicated someone requesting entry to her chambers. Zarathul activated the door controls with a gesture of her upper left hand, expecting to see one of her personal attendants with the morning briefings. Instead, her father's massive frame filled the doorway. Father, she said, immediately straightening into a formal posture. You honor me with your presence. Emperor Vorthen stepped into the room, his golden eyes taking in her appearance with the analytical gaze that had made him one of the most successful rulers in galactic history. You did not sleep last night. It was not a question. Zarathul had inherited many things from her father, including the subtle physical tells that indicated fatigue. She also knew better than to attempt deception. No, father. I found myself contemplating the diplomatic implications of yesterday's meeting. The emperor moved to the balcony, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he surveyed his domain. The human impressed you. Again, not a question. Zarathul joined him on the balcony, maintaining a respectful distance while struggling to keep her expression neutral. His demonstration was certainly remarkable, she said carefully. The reports about human pain tolerance appear to be accurate. That is not what I meant, and you know it. Zarathul felt her four hearts accelerate. Her father was many things: ruler, warrior, strategist, but he was also perceptive in ways that made privacy impossible for those around him. Father, do you think me blind, daughter? Emperor Vorthin turned to face her, his golden eyes reflecting the morning light. Do you think I failed to notice the way you watched him? The way you spoke to him? The way your entire demeanor changed the moment he entered the throne room? The accusation hung between them like a blade. Zarathul knew that denial would be useless, but she also knew that admitting to feelings for an alien diplomatic representative could be seen as a betrayal of her duty to the Empire. He is different, she said finally. I have never encountered anyone like him. No, her father agreed. Nor have I, which is precisely why I assigned you to escort him. Zarathul stared at her father in shock. You planned this? I planned nothing, Emperor Vorthin said with what might have been amusement. But I observed everything. The way you studied him during his demonstration. The way you leaned forward when he spoke directly to you. The way you volunteered to escort him before I could assign someone else to the task. The emperor turned back toward the city, his expression thoughtful. In 4 centuries of rule, I have learned to recognize opportunity when it presents itself. And opportunity, daughter, has a way of arriving in unexpected forms. I don't understand, Zarathul said, though she was beginning to suspect that she understood all too well. The humans represent something new in galactic politics, her father continued. They're powerful enough to be dangerous, but small enough to be influenced. They are technologically advanced, but diplomatically inexperienced. Most importantly, they appear to value individual relationships over institutional treaties. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. Every major power in the galaxy will attempt to forge an alliance with humanity. The Keshri will offer military protection. The Talarians will offer trade agreements. The Mining Guild will offer resource shares. All of these approaches will fail. Why? Zarathul asked, though she thought she might already know the answer. Because humans, as Captain Chen so eloquently demonstrated yesterday, are motivated by factors that other species consider irrelevant. They value honor over profit, relationships over contracts, principles over pragmatism. The Emperor's golden eyes fixed on his daughter. They are, in many ways, surprisingly compatible with Vorthin values. Zarathul felt the conversation spiraling toward implications that both excited and terrified her. Father, what are you suggesting? I am suggesting, Emperor Vorthin said carefully, that the strongest possible alliance with humanity might not be built through traditional diplomatic channels. Before Zarathul could respond, another chime announced a visitor. This time it was her personal aide, a nervous Talarian named Kesara, who managed the princess's daily schedule. Your Majesty, Your Highness, the aide said with multiple bows. Forgive the interruption, but there has been an incident. What kind of incident? The Emperor asked sharply. The human, Captain Chun, was discovered early this morning in the palace medical facility. He was treating his injuries from yesterday's demonstration personally, using primitive medical supplies from his diplomatic kit. Zarathul felt something cold and sharp pierce her chest. Is he badly hurt? The medical staff report that his injuries were more severe than he indicated yesterday. 2nd-degree burns across both hands, plus evidence of nerve damage from the energy discharge. However, he refused all offers of advanced medical treatment. Refused? The Emperor asked with interest. On what grounds? He stated that accepting medical assistance would imply that the demonstration had caused him significant harm, which would be diplomatically inappropriate. The medical staff were unable to convince him otherwise. Zarathul was moving toward the door before she consciously decided to leave. Where is he now? Still in the medical facility, Your Highness. He is attempting to treat the injuries with what the medical staff describe as primitive antiseptics and basic pain medication. Daughter, her father called as she reached the doorway. Zarathul turned back, expecting to be ordered to remain and continue their conversation about diplomatic implications and alliance strategies. Instead, The Emperor's expression was almost gentle. Take the advanced medical kit from my personal suite. The one with the cellular regeneration matrix. Father, if you're going to begin building relationships with humanity, he said quietly, you might as well start with basic medical care. The medical facility occupied an entire wing of the palace, its corridors lined with treatment rooms equipped to handle the physiological needs of dozens of different species. Zarathul found Marcus in a small side room, sitting on an examination table while methodically wrapping his hands with strips of white fabric. He looked up as she entered, and she was struck again by the intensity of his gaze. Princess Zarathul, I wasn't expecting visitors. You're an idiot, she said bluntly, then immediately regretted the breach of diplomatic protocol. To her surprise, Marcus smiled. I've been called worse things by people I liked less. Your injuries are more serious than you indicated, Zarathul continued, setting the medical kit on a nearby counter. The staff report nerve damage. The staff are very thorough, Marcus agreed. Also very insistent about offering treatments that I can't accept. Why not? Zarathul asked, moving closer to examine his hands. The burns were worse than she had imagined. Angry red wounds that must have been causing constant pain. Pride. Politics, Marcus said simply. If I accept advanced medical treatment for injuries sustained during a diplomatic demonstration, it sends the message that your father's test caused me significant harm. That could be interpreted as either weakness on my part or excessive aggression on his. Zarathul stared at him in amazement. You're refusing medical care to protect both your dignity and my father's reputation? Welcome to human diplomacy, Marcus said with a rueful smile. We overcomplicate everything. Then let me uncomplicate it, Zarathul said, opening the medical kit and removing the cellular regeneration matrix. I'm not offering this as official medical treatment. I'm offering it as a personal gift from someone who cares about your well-being. Marcus went very still. Princess, Zara, she said impulsively. When we're alone, please call me Zara. Zara, he repeated, and somehow her name sounded different when he said it, more meaningful. I can't accept. Yes, you can, she interrupted, taking his hands in two of hers while activating the regeneration matrix with a third. Because this isn't about diplomacy or politics or alliance strategies. This is about one person caring for another person who was hurt while trying to prove something that didn't need proving. The matrix hummed to life, its energy field beginning to work on the damaged tissue. Marcus watched in fascination as the burns began to fade, the damaged nerve endings reconnecting and healing. Remarkable technology, he said quietly. Remarkable species, Zarathul replied, not letting go of his hands even though the treatment was automated. Most beings would have screamed during that energy discharge. You used it as an opportunity to tell me a story. Did you understand the story? Marcus asked, his brown eyes searching her face. I understood that Prometheus was punished for caring more about others than about himself, Zarathul said. I understood that he chose suffering willingly because he believed the gift he was giving was worth any price. And I understood that you were telling me you would do the same thing. They sat in silence as the regeneration matrix completed its work, healing not just the burns but the underlying nerve damage as well. When it finished, Marcus flexed his fingers experimentally, marveling at the complete restoration of function. Thank you, he said softly. Thank you for trusting me with the truth about your injuries, Zarathul replied. And for trusting me with the story about Prometheus. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, two of his and two of hers, and seemed to be weighing some internal decision. Finally, he spoke. Zara, I need to tell you something, and I need you to understand that I'm telling you as Marcus, not as Captain Shun or as a diplomatic representative. I'm listening, she said, though her hearts were racing again. Yesterday, when I walked into that throne room and saw you standing beside your father's throne, something happened that I wasn't expecting and wasn't prepared for. Something that has nothing to do with diplomacy or alliances or galactic politics. Zarathul felt her breath catch. What happened? Marcus met her gaze with that unflinching directness that was so uniquely human. "I fell in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and profound and terrifying in their implications. Zarathul felt the universe shift around her, felt everything she had thought she knew about her life rearranging itself into new patterns. "That's impossible," she whispered. "We barely know each other." "I know," Marcus said. "It makes no logical sense. We're from different worlds, different species, different cultures. The political complications alone would be staggering. But logic doesn't always apply to matters of the heart." "Marcus," she began, then stopped, not knowing what to say. "You don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. Because whatever happens with the diplomatic negotiations, whatever alliances are formed or broken, whatever political consequences arise from humanity's presence in this galaxy, I wanted there to be honesty between us." Zarathul looked into his eyes and saw the same determination that had carried him through the energy discharge, the same willingness to endure any cost for something he believed was worth protecting. And she realized that she was looking at the bravest being she had ever met. "Marcus," she said quietly, "what if I told you that something happened to me yesterday, too? Something that changed everything I thought I knew about myself?" His expression became very still, very focused. "What would you tell me?" "I would tell you," Zarathul said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to admit, "that when you walked into that throne room and looked directly at me, when you chose to endure pain rather than show weakness, when you shared your story about Prometheus, I fell in love with you too." The silence that followed was profound, filled with possibility and terror and hope all mixed together. Two beings from different worlds, acknowledging feelings that could reshape the future of galactic diplomacy. And in that moment, both of them realized that they were standing at the beginning of something that would change everything. The next 3 days passed in a blur of secret meetings, stolen moments, and the careful dance of two people falling deeper in love while navigating the treacherous waters of galactic politics. Marcus attended formal negotiation sessions with Emperor Vorthan each morning, while Zarathul found increasingly creative reasons to escort him through different parts of the palace. They talked about everything and nothing, human poetry and Vorthan philosophy, the challenge of leading in times of change, the loneliness of responsibility, and the strange miracle of finding someone who understood you across the vast gulf of species and culture. With each conversation, the connection between them deepened, until Zarathul could barely remember what her life had felt like before Marcus arrived. But on the fourth morning, everything changed. Zarathul was in her private study, reviewing diplomatic briefs, when her personal communicator activated with the emergency pattern that indicated urgent imperial business. Her father's image appeared in the holographic display, his golden eyes hard with an anger she had rarely seen. "Daughter, report to the war room immediately. We have a situation." The war room occupied the most secure section of the palace, its walls lined with tactical displays showing fleet positions throughout Vorthan space. When Zarathul arrived, she found her father standing before the main strategic display alongside Admiral Korthax, the Empire's highest-ranking military officer. "Father," she said, immediately noting the tension radiating from both beings. "Show her," the Emperor commanded. Admiral Korthax activated the display, and suddenly, the room filled with a three-dimensional representation of the Kepler sector, where several human colonies were located. Red indicators marked the positions of what appeared to be a massive fleet. 2 hours ago, the Admiral began, our long-range sensors detected this formation entering Vorthan space without authorization. 47 ships, including what appears to be at least 12 Dreadnought-class vessels. Zarathul studied the display, her four hearts sinking as she recognized the configuration. Keshri Battle Fleet. The largest Keshri fleet ever assembled, her father said grimly. And it's heading directly for the human colony at Kepler 442b. Have they been warned? Zarathul asked. We attempted to contact the colony. Admiral Korthax replied. Their communications array was destroyed by an advanced strike 6 hours ago. They have no idea what's coming. Zarathul felt the blood drain from her face. She had studied the intelligence reports on human colonies. Kepler 442b housed nearly 1 million human civilians, including families with children. The defensive capabilities consisted of a few patrol vessels and a planetary shield that could withstand minor attacks, but would be useless against a full Keshri battle fleet. "Father, we have to help them," she said immediately. "Do we?" Emperor Vorthan asked coldly. The humans established their colony in contested space. They knew the risks. Why should the Vorthan Empire risk our ships and our people to protect beings who refuse to acknowledge our territorial claims? The question hit Zarathul like a physical blow. She understood the political calculation. The Vorthan Empire had no treaty obligations to humanity, no formal alliance that would require military intervention. From a purely strategic standpoint, allowing the Keshri to destroy a human colony would remove a potential rival while demonstrating the consequences of unauthorized expansion. But she also knew that Marcus was preparing to return to human space within the next few days, and that Kepler 442b was one of the colonies he would likely visit. More than that, she knew that standing by while 1 million innocent beings were slaughtered would be a betrayal of everything she believed in. "Because it's right," she said quietly. "Right?" her father asked, his voice dangerous. "Explain to me how risking Vorthan lives for human civilians is right, daughter." Zarathul straightened, drawing on every lesson in leadership and moral courage her father had ever taught her. Because strength that is only used to protect oneself is not strength at all, it's cowardice. Because the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its equals, but how it protects those who cannot protect themselves. And because, she added, meeting her father's golden gaze directly, the humans would do it for us. "Would they?" Admiral Korthax asked skeptically. "How can you be certain?" "Because I know them," Zarathul said with absolute conviction. "I know their history, their values, their character. If a Vorthan colony were threatened, humanity would send every ship they had to defend it, regardless of political considerations or strategic calculations. They would send those ships because they believe that some things transcend politics." The war room fell silent as father and daughter stared at each other across the tactical display. Finally, Emperor Vorthan spoke. "And if I decide that the strategic interests of the Vorthan Empire outweigh your moral concerns?" Zarathul felt the weight of the moment, understood that her next words would define not just the fate of the human colony, but her own relationship with her father and her role in the Empire. When she spoke, her voice was steady but filled with quiet determination. "Then I will take my personal ship and go to defend them alone." Admiral Korthax made a sound of shock, but Emperor Vorthan simply studied his daughter's face with those penetrating golden eyes. "You would risk your life for beings you barely know?" he asked. "I would risk my life for what I believe is right," Zarathul replied. "You taught me that a leader's first duty is to their principles, not their comfort. I also taught you that a ruler must consider the broader implications of their actions," her father said. "If we intervene on behalf of the humans, the Keshri will consider it an act of war. Are you prepared to accept responsibility for the consequences?" Zarathul thought of Marcus, of their conversations about human values, and the price of doing what was right regardless of the cost. She thought of the children on Kepler 442b who would die if the Keshri fleet reached them unopposed. And she thought of the being she wanted to be, not just as a princess, but as a person worthy of Marcus's love. "Yes," she said simply. "I am." Emperor Vorthan was quiet for a long moment, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical display. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of what might have been pride. "Admiral Korthax, how quickly can we mobilize the 3rd Fleet?" The Admiral blinked in surprise. "Your Majesty? Are you ordering intervention?" "I am ordering the protection of innocent civilians who are unable to protect themselves," the emperor said firmly. The fact that they happen to be human is irrelevant to that calculation. The Third Fleet can be ready to depart within 4 hours, Admiral Korthax replied, his voice taking on the professional efficiency of a seasoned military commander. However, even at maximum acceleration, we won't reach Kepler 442b before the Keshri fleet arrives. Then, we'll have to ensure that the colony can hold out until we get there, Emperor Vorthan said. He turned to Zarathul. Daughter, I have a mission for you. Anything, Zarathul said immediately. Find Captain Shun and inform him of the situation. Tell him that the Vorthan Empire is dispatching a fleet to assist in the defense of Kepler 442b, but that we need detailed intelligence about the colony's defensive capabilities and the surrounding space. Also tell him, the Emperor paused, his golden eyes reflecting something that might have been amusement, that if he has any ideas about how to delay a Keshri battle fleet with inferior forces, now would be an excellent time to demonstrate human tactical ingenuity. Zarathul found Marcus in his quarters, reviewing diplomatic documents on a portable display. When she explained the situation, his reaction was immediate and visceral. His face went pale, his jaw tightened, and she could see the same protective fury in his eyes that she felt in her own hearts. "A million people," he said quietly, "including children." "My father is sending the Third Fleet," Zarathul said quickly, "but they won't arrive in time to prevent the initial attack." Marcus stood and began pacing, his mind clearly racing through possibilities. The colony has basic shields and maybe a dozen patrol ships against 47 Keshri vessels. He stopped pacing and looked at her directly. "They're going to die unless someone can buy them time." "Marcus," Zarathul said carefully, "my father asked if you had any ideas about delaying a superior force with inferior resources." "Actually," Marcus said slowly, "I do have an idea. It's completely insane and will almost certainly result in the destruction of any ships involved, but it might work." "Tell me," Zarathul said. "The Keshri fleet will drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and then proceed to the colony at sublight speeds. Standard tactics call for establishing orbital superiority before beginning planetary bombardment. But if someone could force them to engage prematurely in the outer system where there's room to maneuver." "Go on," Zarathul urged. "A small, fast ship could harass the fleet, force them to pursue instead of proceeding directly to the colony. Led them on a chase through the asteroid fields in the outer system. The Keshri would eventually win, but it might delay them long enough for your father's fleet to arrive." Zarathul felt her heart stop. "You're talking about a suicide mission." "I'm talking about the only chance those people have," Marcus replied. "One ship, properly handled, could delay an entire fleet for hours. Maybe long enough." "One ship crewed by whom?" Zarathul asked, though she already knew the answer. "Me," Marcus said simply. "I know human technology, I know the system layout, and I'm the only person here who doesn't have other responsibilities." "No," Zarathul said immediately. "Absolutely not." "Zara, I said no," she repeated, her voice rising. "I won't let you throw your life away on a plan that might not even work." Marcus moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me. This isn't about throwing my life away. This is about being willing to risk everything for something worth protecting. You said yesterday that you understood the story of Prometheus. This is different," Zarathul protested. "No, it isn't," Marcus said gently. "Prometheus gave humanity fire because he believed we deserved the chance to grow and flourish, even though he knew he would pay a terrible price for it. This is the same choice." Zarathul stared into his eyes and saw the same determination she had witnessed in the throne room, the same willingness to endure any cost for something he believed in. And she realized that trying to stop him would be like trying to stop the tide. "Then you won't go alone," she said quietly. "Sara, no. You have too much to lose." "I have everything to lose," she interrupted. "If you die, Marcus Chun, then everything I care about dies with you. So if you're determined to attempt this impossible mission, then We attempt it together. Marcus started to protest, but she continued before he could speak. Besides, she said with a slight smile that didn't quite hide the fear in her eyes, you said it yourself. One properly handled ship might be able to delay an entire fleet. But two properly handled ships might actually have a chance of winning. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her into his arms. They held each other tightly, two beings from different worlds who had found something worth fighting for together. All right, he said quietly. Together. Together, she agreed. And as they began planning their desperate mission, both of them understood that they were not just fighting for the lives of a million strangers, but for the future they were only beginning to imagine together the voyage to Kepler. 442b took 18 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity, during which Marcus and Zarathul worked frantically to modify their ships for the mission ahead. Zarathul piloted her personal vessel, a sleek Vorthan interceptor built for speed and maneuverability, while Marcus commanded a human diplomatic courier that had been retrofitted with military-grade shields and weapons. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, just as the Keshri battle fleet was beginning its final approach to the colony world. 47 ships arranged in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons designed to turn planets into lifeless rocks. Contact established with colony defense. Marcus reported over the comm. They've managed to evacuate most of the civilian population to underground shelters, but the shields won't hold against a concentrated bombardment. How long before the Keshri reach bombardment range? Zarathul asked, running final diagnostics on her ship's weapon systems. 12 minutes, Marcus replied grimly. Your father's fleet is still 6 hours away. Zarathul activated the tactical display that linked their two ships, showing the Keshri formation as a collection of red dots moving inexorably toward the blue, representing the human colony. Their own two ships appeared as tiny green specks at the edge of the system. All right, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Let's see if we can get their attention. The plan was deceptively simple. Use their superior speed and maneuverability to harass the Keshri fleet, drawing them away from the colony and into the asteroid fields of the outer system. Once there, they would use hit-and-run tactics to delay the enemy fleet as long as possible, hopefully until Emperor Vorthan's third fleet arrived. What made the plan nearly suicidal was the odds. 2 small ships against 47 capital vessels, each one capable of destroying them with a single direct hit. Remember, Marcus said as they accelerated toward the Keshri formation, we're not trying to win a battle. We're trying to buy time. Stay fast, stay unpredictable, and don't let them corner us. Understood, Zarathul replied. Marcus, yeah. When this is over, assuming we survive, we need to have a serious conversation about your tendency to volunteer for impossible missions. Despite the terror of their situation, Marcus laughed. When this is over, I promise we'll have that conversation. Among others, they streaked into the Keshri formation like 2 arrows fired into a flock of birds. Zarathul's interceptor danced between the massive dreadnoughts, her weapons firing precisely targeted bursts that damaged sensor arrays and communication equipment. Marcus followed in her wake, his heavier ship targeting engine components and weapon systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The perfectly ordered Keshri formation dissolved into chaos as ships turned to pursue the 2 intruders, their weapons fire lighting up space like deadly fireworks. Several Keshri vessels collided with each other in their eagerness to engage the attackers. It's working, Zarathul called over the comm as she rolled her ship around a massive asteroid, using the rock as cover from pursuing fire. They're breaking formation. Phase 1 complete. Marcus agreed, weaving between 2 Keshri destroyers while targeting their weapon systems. Now comes the hard part. The hard part was leading the enemy fleet deeper into the asteroid field while avoiding the increasingly desperate attempts to destroy them. The Keshri, renowned throughout the galaxy for their military discipline, had been caught completely off guard by the audacity of the attack, and were now responding with fury rather than tactical precision. For the next 3 hours, Marcus and Zarathul played a deadly game of cat and mouse among the asteroids. They used every trick they could imagine, hiding behind rocks, using gravity wells to slingshot around larger asteroids, even detonating unstable or deposits to create temporary barriers of debris. Zarathul proved to be a pilot of extraordinary skill, her interceptor moving through the asteroid field like a dancer navigating a crowded stage. She seemed to anticipate every asteroid, every gap, every opportunity for cover or attack. Marcus, meanwhile, demonstrated the human genius for improvisation, using his ship's superior shields to ram smaller Keshri vessels and employing unorthodox tactics that no military academy would have taught. "How many have we damaged?" Zarathul asked during a brief lull as they regrouped behind a particularly large asteroid. Marcus checked his tactical display. 17 ships with significant damage, including 6 that are essentially out of action. But we're taking damage too. My shields are down to 40%, and my port engine is showing stress fractures. My weapons array is overheating, Zarathul reported. I can manage maybe 10 more minutes of sustained fire before I risk a complete system failure. "The colony?" Marcus asked. "Still intact," Zarathul replied, checking her long-range sensors. "The Keshri fleet commander ordered a full pursuit when we entered the asteroid field. They left only a token force to maintain the blockade." As if summoned by their conversation, the Keshri fleet emerged from behind a cluster of asteroids in a coordinated formation clearly designed to trap them. The enemy commander had finally regained control of his forces and was now deploying them with the tactical precision for which the Keshri were famous. "We're surrounded," Marcus observed with remarkable calm for someone facing imminent death. "Not surrounded," Zarathul corrected, studying the enemy formation with tactical eyes inherited from generations of Vorthan military leaders. "Cornered. There's a difference. Which is, when you're surrounded, you have no options," she said, her voice taking on a fierce intensity that Marcus had never heard before. "When you're cornered, you have exactly one option. Which is, you fight your way out," Zarathul said. And suddenly, Marcus understood why the Vorthan Empire had dominated this region of space for centuries. What followed was the most desperate 15 minutes of Marcus's life. Zarathul's interceptor became a weapon of pure destruction, her 4 arms working the controls with inhuman speed and precision while she carved a path through the Keshri formation. Marcus followed in her wake, his ship's weapons providing covering fire while he targeted any Keshri vessel that tried to intercept her. They broke through the encirclement at the cost of severe damage to both ships. Zarathul's interceptor was leaking atmosphere from multiple hull breaches, while Marcus's courier had lost one engine entirely and was running on emergency power. "Contacts!" Marcus shouted suddenly. Multiple hyperspace signatures emerging at the system's edge. Zarathul's sensors confirmed what Marcus had detected, a massive fleet dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. For a moment, her heart stopped as she feared that Keshri reinforcements had arrived. Then she saw the tactical markings and nearly wept with relief. "Third Fleet," she whispered. "Father came." The Vorthan Third Fleet was a sight that would be remembered for generations. 68 ships of the line, their hulls gleaming with the dark metal that absorbed energy weapons, their formation so precise it looked like a work of art. At their head flew the flagship Dominion, Emperor Vorthan's personal command vessel. The effect on the Keshri fleet was immediate and dramatic. Faced with the sudden appearance of a superior force, the Keshri commander immediately began transmitting surrender requests. The battle that had seemed destined to result in the destruction of a human colony ended without another shot being fired. "All Keshri vessels," came Emperor Vorthan's voice over the general communications frequency. "You are in violation of Vorthan territorial claims and have attacked civilians under our protection. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The Keshri fleet departed the system within the hour, their damaged ships limping away in defeat. The human colony was safe its population emerging from the underground shelters to find their world defended by an alien fleet they had never expected to see. But Marcus and Zarathul barely noticed the victory celebration. Their ships, battered beyond the possibility of independent travel, had been recovered by Vorthan rescue vessels and brought aboard the flagship. They now stood in Emperor Vorthan's private quarters, facing the ruler of the Vorthan Empire while still wearing their battle-damaged flight suits. "Well," the Emperor said, his golden eyes moving between his daughter and the human who had risked everything to protect strangers. "That was certainly educational." "Father," Zarathul began, "I want to explain." "Explain what?" Emperor Vorthan interrupted gently. "That you risked your life to save innocent civilians? That you demonstrated tactical brilliance under impossible circumstances? That you chose to stand with someone you love rather than let them face danger alone?" Zarathul stared at her father in shock. You knew." "Daughter, I have been watching beings fall in love for 4 centuries. Did you think I would fail to recognize it in my own child?" The Emperor turned his attention to Marcus. "Captain Shun, you have my gratitude for protecting my daughter during the battle." "Your daughter protected me, Your Majesty," Marcus replied. "I've never seen anyone pilot a ship like that. She saved my life at least a dozen times." "And you saved hers," the Emperor said. "Multiple times, according to the battle recordings. It seems you make an effective team." "We do," Zarathul said quietly. Emperor Vorthan was silent for a long moment, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he studied the 2 beings before him. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of imperial authority. "The defense of Kepler 442b will be remembered as one of the great tactical achievements in galactic history. 2 ships holding off a fleet of 47 for over 3 hours while sustaining minimal casualties is unprecedented. It will also mark the beginning of a formal alliance between the Vorthan Empire and humanity." "En alliance?" Marcus asked. "A marriage alliance," the Emperor clarified, and both Marcus and Zarathul went very still. "The political benefits are obvious. Humanity gains the protection of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, while the Vorthan Empire gains access to human adaptability and innovation. But more than that, it represents something new in galactic politics." "Father," Zarathul whispered. "It represents," the Emperor continued, "the idea that different species can not only coexist, but can become something greater together than they ever were apart. It represents hope." He turned to Marcus directly. "Captain Shun, I am offering you the opportunity to marry my daughter and become a prince of the Vorthan Empire. This would make you the first alien ever to hold such a position, and would establish humanity as our most trusted allies." Marcus looked at Zarathul, seeing in her eyes the same love and determination that had carried them through the battle. "Your Majesty, I would be honored to accept, but only if Zara wants me to." "What I want," Zarathul said, stepping forward to take his hands in 2 of hers, "is to spend my life with the bravest, most stubborn, most wonderful being I've ever met. Whether that's as a princess or a commoner doesn't matter to me." "Then it's settled," Emperor Vorthan said with satisfaction. "The wedding will take place in 3 months, with representatives from every major power in the galaxy in attendance. It will be the social event of the century." As Marcus and Zarathul embraced, the Emperor watched with something that might have been paternal pride. The human had walked into his throne room a week ago and stolen his daughter's heart. Now he was about to become part of the imperial family and help forge a new future for 2 species. "One question, Your Majesty," Marcus said, looking up from his embrace with Zarathul. "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" Emperor Vorthan smiled, an expression that transformed his intimidating features into something almost gentle. "Because, Captain Shun, in 4 centuries of rule, I have learned to recognize something precious when I see it. And what you and my daughter have found together is very precious indeed." He paused, looking out the viewport at the stars beyond. "Besides, the galaxy is changing. New threats are emerging, Old alliances are crumbling, and the future belongs to those who can adapt and grow together. Humanity represents change, possibility, hope. The Vorthan Empire represents strength, stability, tradition. Together, we might build something neither of our species could achieve alone. A better future, Zarathul said softly. A future worth fighting for, Marcus agreed. And as they stood together in the flagship of the Vorthan Third Fleet, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space and the infinite possibilities of tomorrow, all three of them understood that they had just witnessed the beginning of something extraordinary, a love story that would reshape the galaxy itself. The human warrior had indeed stolen the princess's heart. But, in the end, it was her heart that conquered the galaxy. Princess Zarathul stood motionless beside her father's obsidian throne, her four arms folded in the traditional pose of royal dignity. The massive doors of the throne room groaned open, their crystalline surface catching the light from 1,000 hovering orbs that illuminated the chamber. She had witnessed countless audiences in this hall over her 2 centuries of life, had seen delegations from every corner of the Galactic Federation bow before the Vorthan Empire's might. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The human entered the room with a confidence that defied logic. Behind him walked Ambassador Kethrak, the nervous Talarian's 6 legs clicking rapidly against the polished floor as he struggled to keep pace. The human moved differently than any being she had ever observed. Where other species scuttled, slithered, or glided with their natural grace, this creature walked with a purposeful stride that seemed to challenge the very air around him. Captain Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Force stood 6 feet tall, which was average for his species, but towering by galactic standards. His dark hair was cut short in military fashion, and his brown eyes swept the throne room with an analytical gaze that missed nothing. Unlike the flowing robes favored by most galactic diplomats, he wore a simple black uniform with silver insignia that caught the light as he moved. "Your Imperial Majesty," Ambassador Kethrak began, his voice trembling slightly, "I present Captain Marcus Chun, military attaché and diplomatic representative of the human colony worlds." Emperor Vorthan leaned forward on his throne, his massive frame casting shadows across the dais. The ruler of the Vorthan Empire possessed the typical features of his race: dark purple skin that seemed to absorb light, for powerful arms ending in clawed hands, and eyes like molten gold that had intimidated countless enemies over his 4th-century reign. So, the Emperor's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "These are the humans we have heard whispers about. The species that appeared from nowhere and began establishing colonies in contested space." Marcus stepped forward, and Zarathul felt something strange flutter in her chest. He showed no fear, no hesitation in the face of her father's intimidating presence. Instead, he offered a respectful bow that somehow managed to convey respect without submission. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice clear and steady, "humanity comes before the Vorthan Empire seeking not conflict, but understanding. We are new to this galaxy, but we are not naive about its dangers." The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. "Understanding? Your species has established 17 colonies in sectors that 3 different empires have laid claim to. Some might call that aggressive expansion. Others might call it survival," Marcus replied without missing a beat. "Humanity learned long ago that those who do not grow die. But growth does not require the destruction of others." Zarathul found herself studying the human's face as he spoke. There was something in his expression that she had never seen before in the countless diplomatic meetings she had attended. While other species came before her father with either arrogance or fear, this human displayed something else entirely: genuine conviction. "Survival," Emperor Vorthan mused, settling back in his throne. "Tell me, Captain Chun, what does humanity know of survival? Your species has existed in space for what, 50 years? Some of the beings in this room have lived longer than your entire spacefaring civilization." A slight smile tugged at the corner of Marcus's mouth, and Zarathul felt that strange flutter again. Respectfully, Your Majesty, humanity has been surviving much longer than 50 years. We learned survival on a world that tried to kill us every day. Predators that hunted us, diseases that ravaged us, natural disasters that destroyed our cities, and wars that nearly wiped us out entirely. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. What we've learned in space is simply an extension of what we learned on Earth, that survival is not just about strength or technology. It's about adaptation, cooperation, and the will to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless. The throne room fell silent, except for the soft humming of the gravity generators. Zarathul watched her father's face carefully, reading the micro-expressions that she had learned to interpret over decades of studying his moods. The Emperor was intrigued, which was both rare and dangerous. Adaptation, the Emperor repeated slowly. "Show me, Your Majesty?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he understood perfectly what was being asked. "I have heard reports that humans possess unusual capabilities, stories that seem too extraordinary to believe. The Keshri fleet claims you destroyed 3 of their dreadnoughts with outdated frigates. The Mining Guild reports that human workers can function in environments that would kill most species. I want to see what makes humanity so adaptable." Zarathul's 4 hands clenched involuntarily. Her father was testing the human, pushing him to prove his species' worth. She had seen him do this countless times before, and it rarely ended well for the visitors. Marcus nodded slowly. "What would you have me demonstrate, Your Majesty?" The Emperor gestured to one of his guards, a massive Vorthan warrior who stood nearly 8 feet tall and carried a ceremonial war staff that could discharge enough energy to level a small building. "Crothall, show our guest the traditional test of worthiness." The guard stepped forward and activated his staff, which began to glow with accumulated energy. He held it out horizontally between his 2 lower arms while his upper arms gestured for Marcus to approach. "The test is simple," the Emperor explained. "Most species possess natural abilities that allow them to handle energy discharges. Vorthans absorb energy through our skin. Talarians can redirect it through their carapaces. Even the primitive Keshri can dissipate electrical charges through their modified nervous systems. Humans, I am told, have no such natural defenses." Zarathul watched in fascination and growing concern as Marcus approached the glowing staff without hesitation. The energy weapon was set to a level that would cause painful but non-fatal burns to most species. For a human with no natural energy resistance, it could be devastating. "The challenge," the Emperor continued, "is to maintain contact with the staff while it discharges a full energy cycle. Most beings use their natural abilities to survive. What will humanity use?" Marcus reached out and grasped the staff with both hands. Immediately, Zarathul could see the energy beginning to course through his body. His jaw tightened, and she could see the muscles in his neck strain, but he did not let go. "Fascinating," her father murmured. "No energy absorption, no redirection, no apparent defense at all. Yet he maintains his grip." The energy discharge intensified, and Zarathul found herself leaning forward in concern. She could see smoke beginning to rise from where Marcus's hands contacted the staff, could smell the acrid scent of burning flesh. Still, he held on. What happened next would be burned in her memory forever. Instead of screaming or begging for mercy as the energy tore through his nervous system, Marcus began to speak. His voice was strained but steady, and he spoke not to the Emperor or his guard, but directly to her. "In human mythology," he said through gritted teeth, "we have a story about a man named Prometheus. He stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, knowing he would be punished for it. They chained him to a mountain where an eagle would tear out his liver every day, and every night it would grow back so the torture could continue. The energy reached its peak intensity, and Zarathul could see Marcus's entire body shaking from the assault. But his eyes never left hers, and his voice never faltered. The gods thought they were punishing him," he continued, "but Prometheus understood something they did not. Pain is not weakness. Pain is simply information. And humans have learned to process that information and keep functioning regardless. The energy cycle completed, and the staff dimmed. Marcus released it and took a step back, his hands visibly burned but still functional. He looked up at the Emperor with the same steady gaze he had maintained throughout the ordeal. That, he said simply, is what humanity uses. Not special abilities or natural defenses. We use will. We use the determination to endure whatever must be endured, and to keep moving forward no matter the cost. The throne room erupted in shocked murmurs from the assembled courtiers, but Zarathul heard none of it. Her entire attention was focused on the human who had just willingly subjected himself to torture rather than show weakness, and who had somehow made even that act into something beautiful by sharing it with her. In that moment, she understood with crystal clarity that her life had just changed forever. This strange, scarred, utterly magnificent being had walked in her father's throne room and stolen something she had never even known she possessed. Her heart. The Emperor slowly rose from his throne, his golden eyes fixed on Marcus with what might have been respect. Impressive, Captain Shun. Most impressive indeed. It seems the reports about human resilience were not exaggerated. Resilience is just another word for stubbornness, Your Majesty, Marcus replied, flexing his damaged hands experimentally. And humans are very, very stubborn. Indeed, the Emperor said, a hint of amusement in his voice. We shall continue this discussion tomorrow. Guard Captain Zarathul will show you to your quarters. Zarathul started in surprise. Her father rarely assigned her to escort duties, and never for beings he considered unimportant. She stepped forward, trying to maintain her composure, even as her mind raced. It would be my honor, she said formally. Though her heart was beating so rapidly, she was certain everyone in the room could hear it. As she led Marcus from the throne room, she caught her father watching her with those knowing golden eyes, and realized that the Emperor of the Vorthan Empire was far more perceptive than she had ever given him credit for. The game, she realized, had only just begun.